Good evening. And this is the visit that should have taken place last year. Some of you will remember that when we were at the international conference in Holland, that while in meditation, the voice spoke and told me to go home. And it told me to stay away from public work, even away from my students, to prepare for a message that would be given me and further instruction for our work. Of course, those of you who have known of this work for many years, and some from the beginning, already know that this work has been carried on under instruction. It has never been a part of my personal desire to be in any work like this. It was something given me to do, and to the best of my ability, I've been doing it, but under orders. And so it was that we went home and canceled the 2 months of work that still was before us and put in what you will recognize was a very, very difficult period, a period of waiting for something to happen, a period of waiting for a message, for instructions, for something that, well, something we know not what, until it comes. It was several months before the specific word came, and when it did, it came in these words: the students do not know the message of the infinite way. This, remember, is speaking of the infinite way students. The students do not know the message and do not know its principles. There was a little surprise about that, but not too much, because when the principles of this message are understood, they're demonstrable, and the evidence quickly appears in the lives of those who do understand, who do grasp the meaning of them. And so again, there was a period of waiting and then a gradual unfoldment as to how to present these principles in a more understanding way, in a simpler way. And then began the work of presentation. It began with my little groups on one of the neighboring islands in the Hawaiian chain, and then on Oahu, and finally the closed class of July. Students came from many parts of the world for that class, and we knew on the very first night of it that something of an unusual nature was taking place. Unusual even for our work, which has been full of unusual experiences from its start. Then, a surprising event. There was an occasion for us to go to San Diego, California, personal one, but as in the past, I was invited to speak there for one of the religious science branches, and 78 students appeared out of nowhere, but from all over the United States, asking for a closed class. And under the strangest circumstances imaginable, there were 2,000 members of a trade union and their families in San Diego for a conference. Rooms were impossible to get, and public rooms for a meeting place or a classroom out of the question. And yet, under those circumstances, that class was held. And again, we learned much that we had not known before. And since then, of course, there has been the trip to Canada, to England, Holland, Germany, Switzerland. While in Germany, contracts were signed for the publication of all of the Infinite Way writings in German, including the publication of our monthly letter in German. And in France, 3 of our books have gone into translation. And so, along with the instruction of how to present this message more clearly, there came also the statement that this work would now pass from the purely metaphysical movement aspect into a wider, a more universal acceptance. And it would take a long, long time to tell you how literally that has come true in the past 8 months. And so, here we find ourselves back in New York. You probably can tell from my accent I belong here. And I suppose the simplest way for me to introduce this subject to you would be to say that all of us, speaking of all of us who are in this room tonight, may be likened to those who, down through all of the ages, have sought the Holy Grail. There has probably never been a time in recorded history when this search for the Holy Grail has not taken place, always by the few. Why the Holy Grail? The cup from which the Master is supposed to have taken a drink of refreshment, of renewal, probably a drink of living waters, in which he found the power of resurrection or ascension, the power of life eternal, immortal being. And so we surely are seekers of immortality. We are seekers of whatever that water is that springs up into life eternal. We, all of us, are trying to find that cup or to drink from that cup and find the spiritual life. Of old, those who sought after the Holy Grail went on pilgrimages, starting out with youth and strength and vitality and probably wealth and all of the things necessary for a wide search, but always ended in physical and material depletion, always ended back where it started. And there, when every resource had evaporated, there the holy cup was found, or the bluebird, or whatever else it is that signifies the accomplishment of one's spiritual purpose. But the search, you see, was always made by going to places. It was always sought externally, as if it existed here or there, in spite of the Master's very clear instructions that it is useless to go to these holy mountains or even to holy temples in Jerusalem. For the kingdom of God is neither low here nor low there. It is within you. And yet, the search has usually been made externally instead of within. In this past century, a great step forward has been made because the realm of mind has been discovered. Great things have come out of the mind of man, probably more inventions and discoveries in one century than in all of the centuries put together of the past. The great secrets of transportation, leading us from that first one-lung automobile up to our present 1,000 and 1,500 miles an hour planes. And the telephone and the telegraph and the radio and the television and surgery, medical discoveries, science, art, music. Such things have come out of the mind of man, such as the mind of man previously never even dreamed about. But this very blessing brought about a state of self-deception in mankind, because in discovering these treasures that lay hidden in the mind of man, it was also believed that power was in the mind. It was also believed that the issues of life, of health, of abundance could be found in the mind. It was believed that mind and its power of thought was really power. And so men have deceived themselves in trying to make themselves believe that in finding mind they had found God. Nothing could have been wider of the mark. Nothing could have been more erroneous. In fact, I don't know of anything in 2,000 years that missed the mark as much as that, since Paul made his great blunder in stating that the carnal mind is enmity against God. As if an infinite God could have an enemy. As if there could be a power against God. As if God, infinite being, could contend with something opposed to itself. As if the creative power of this universe could create something detrimental to itself. The greatest secret that life holds is the secret of the nature of God. This is the great mystery. This is the great secret. To know Him aright is life eternal. I doubt that there is anyone who has ever touched the spiritual realm of life who doesn't believe that to know God aright is life eternal. Everyone who has ever discovered the secret of God has found life eternal, has found the immortality not only of their soul, but of their entire existence unto eternity. Mind, that mind from which comes these tremendous secrets, mysteries, inventions, and discoveries, is an instrument of God. It is the means whereby God can impart to us its secrets and its mysteries. But because it is an instrument, it is an effect. Because it is an effect, it can't be God. If the question ever arises in your thought as to whether or not it can be proved that mind isn't God, just remember this: the mind can be used by man. God can't. The mind can be used either for good or for evil. God can't. Out of the mind can come good or evil, and even whatever degree of power you may at any time generate in the mind, always remember that power can be used for good or evil. You can use the powers of your mind to bless or to kill, to curse. Recently, a minister of the church wrote a book revealing this very fact, that you can make plants grow with the power of your thought, or you can kill them. That really can't be God, can it? God has too pure eyes to behold iniquity. God hath no pleasure in your dying. Turn ye and live. The Master tells us that he came to earth to do the will of his Master, and he raised the dead back to life again. Not once did he kill anybody. Not once did he curse them or condemn them. Not once did he even suffer them to be punished for their sins. Neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more. Forgive unto 70 times 7. Even as a human being can forgive. What God must forgive is beyond anyone's imagination. The mission and the message of Christ Jesus is to heal the sick, raise the dead, feed the hungry, open the eyes of the blind, open the ears of the deaf, make the cripples walk. Not a trace of evil in this, not a trace of evil in that entire dedicated life, because of his realization that I and the Father are one, and whatever the Father doeth, that's all I can do. Nothing opposed to God, only that which is of the will of God. That's not true of the mind. The mind can bless and the mind can curse. The mind can hold a power of good thought and it can hold a power of bad thought. The mind, when it is the mind of man, not only has the dual nature of good and evil, but you notice that everything that comes forth from the mind has that same dual nature. Whether it's the electricity that blesses your home and then kills those who come in contact with its power, whether it is this blessed atom and its new discoveries, or the curse of its misuse, whether it is the joys of automobiling or the curse of its misuse, whatever it is that you can think of has within itself the dual nature of good and evil, but not God. Not God. To find the realm of God is to find life eternal. To find life eternal, you must find an atmosphere, a realm in which there are no powers of evil, or they would soon overcome that life eternal. They would make health into sickness or youth into age. In order to get beyond the ravages of a calendar, in order to get beyond the wear and tear of material forces, you have to go beyond the powers of the mind. Do not misunderstand. There are three levels of life. There is the material level, and on that level, too, you can use your body for good or for evil. You can use your strength for good or for evil. You can use your money for good or for evil. You can use your property for good or for evil. In the material realm, anything that exists as matter can be used for good or evil. This cannot be the realm of God. As you go on into the mental realm and discover good thoughts and bad thoughts, good powers and bad powers, you realize, too, that just as material force and energy can be used for good, so can the mental realm. But in neither case have you touched the realm of God. And bear this in mind, that when you go beyond the realm of matter or mind, you reach an atmosphere in which evil is not a possibility, in which there is not even a potentiality of evil. To know Him aright, to come into the consciousness of God, means to come into the demonstration of life eternal, immortal, harmonious. It means to come into that which assures divine harmony. But not divine harmony while you are in the 20s, 30s, or 40s. No, it has to be a divine harmony that lasts if you're 90 or 100 or 110, because it has to last even beyond what we call the grave. For life does not end at the grave. Often it begins there. Now, the body is the temple of God. Therefore, never believe for a moment that as you come into the spiritual realm that you do away with your body, or that you do away with your good. I have had students complain that if this is true, then we probably would have to live without washing machines and refrigerators and automobiles and airplanes, but never believe that. The higher we go in spiritual consciousness, the more of these things we will have, but we will lose the capacity to use them for evil. Surely Mr. Steinmetz had this in mind when he said that the greatest discovery of the 20th century would be spiritual power. He knew that, and he knew that it wasn't going to exterminate gadgets, that probably it would increase the discovery of them and the use of them until we do reach that ideal day of working 2 or 3 hours a week for our living and enjoying the rest with hyacinths for the soul. No, you do not do away with the body by coming into an understanding of God, but you do make the body less subject both to material and to mental forces. In the same way that by coming into the realm of God, you do not do away with your mind, but the mind is restored to you in its normal function, not as a power of good or of evil, merely as an instrument of awareness, an instrument by means of which we come into our conscious awareness of God, our conscious awareness of good, our conscious demonstration of good. So it is that we need not fear that in the new dispensation we will lose bodies or minds, or that we will find that we no longer have use for a body or mind, but both the body and the mind will be devoid of the dual powers of good or evil, and they will be instruments of life. Life will fulfill itself through the mind and the body, and life will always be the power, the presence, the intelligence, the eternality and the immortality of the mind and of the body. The realization of God comes in the moment when ye think not. It comes in those moments when you are not taking thought for your life or what you shall eat or what you shall drink. It comes when the mind is so completely at rest, so completely desireless, that it can be a clear transparency through which God, the soul of man, the spirit of man, can reveal itself. It is for this reason that the experiences of the mystics always come at unexpected moments and unannounced moments. And the experiences of the mystics is never what any human being ever thinks they are. They are something that can never be known to the mind or through the mind, except that when they occur, the mind is the instrument of awareness through which they appear. It is so in what we call healing work. As you know, healing work is a very important part of the spiritual ministry. The Master made it of such importance that it would seem from the reading of the Gospels that he gave most of his time and attention to that subject. Of course, the healing work was only the effect of his consciousness. It was really the evidence of what the attained spiritual consciousness achieves. But he used healing as the demonstration of the truth of his principle. The message which he said was not his, but which came from the Father. Therefore, healing to this day remains an important part of our work. Now, it really makes no difference, those of you who have had experience in healing work, it really makes no difference what your approach has been, mystical, spiritual, mental. You, of all people, know that regardless of what form of treatment you used, the healing did not take place because of the treatment, but because of something that happened in your consciousness after the treatment had been given. In other words, the treatment merely lifted you into an atmosphere of quiet and peace where the activity and the presence of God could be realized. When you recognize this, you will know the treatment, as we understand it in the metaphysical world, is not the agency for healing. It is the agency whereby those who would heal lift themselves above the world of appearances, and there become the transparencies through which the activity of God is made manifest. I can illustrate that this way. The master, beholding the crippled man and being asked for healing, turns to him and says, "What did hinder you?" He doesn't say that I'm going to pray to God for your healing. He doesn't say I'm going to give you a treatment and get rid of that disease or the mental cause of it. He merely says, what did hinder you? In other words, the principle he was about to demonstrate was, this thing that's making you sit there isn't a power. So rise and pick up your bed and walk. You really don't need any God in this demonstration, because there is no power to keep you in that impotent condition. In raising Lazarus from the dead, he said, I do not have to pray. Oh, for the benefit of those around here who don't understand the mystery, I will, but I don't have to. Why? Well, we don't need any God power here. There isn't any power but God, so there isn't any power in death. Those with very much experience in healing surely know by now that there is no power in disease. There is no power in the things that cause disease. There is no power in infection or contagion, and the proof of it is that anyone who has ever witnessed the healing of a cold or grip or flu or any of these so-called germ diseases has demonstrated that the germs aren't power. They've demonstrated thousands of times in their lives that that which the world is fearing and is taking shots for and holding handkerchiefs up to their faces to save themselves from isn't a disease at all, isn't a power at all. Otherwise, with their metaphysical treatment, they couldn't heal it. Now, the secret of all spiritual healing is that the omnipotence of God renders all else of no power. Now then, this statement won't heal anybody of anything. It is necessary that one actually attain some measure of that mind that was also in Christ Jesus. In other words, some measure of the consciousness that what did hinder you? Pick up your bed and walk. There's no power over there. So it is that in our earliest student stage, it is necessary in the spiritual activity as well as in the mental healing activity, it is necessary to indulge that which we call treatments. But in the spiritual work, the treatment is never given to a patient. The treatment is always given to oneself. And it isn't for the purpose of healing anyone. It is for the purpose of lifting oneself, the practitioner, to that elevation of consciousness in which the practitioner can say, I have no fear of those germs. I have no fear of that disease. I have no fear of your poverty. I have no fear of your sins. It is in this wise, then, that we learn that that which has been called material force and power in the realm of disease isn't really power at all. And it is in this same wise that we learn that that which has been called mental cause for disease isn't any more true than the physical cause for disease. Neither have within themselves any more power than human consciousness gives to it. Therefore, to come to an understanding of the nature of God will very quickly reveal life eternal, because it reveals the fact that there are no powers operating to shorten the life of man, whether by age, disease, accident, or any material or mental force. Now, in the study of primitive races, and it's one of the most fascinating studies in all the world, you learn that they knew all of this long centuries before the Master was on earth. They knew how to heal and they knew how to kill mentally. They were thousands of years ahead of the minister who discovered that you can destroy plants with your thought. They could go further than that. They could destroy human life. And not only that this took place thousands of years ago, it still does. Wherever there is a people who know the secrets of mind, they both heal with it and kill with it. That is a part of ordinary practice among the ancient Aborigines of Australia, the Polynesians, certainly the Hawaiian kahunas knew how to heal and how to kill. The hexers certainly know how to do it. And in Central and South America, it is as common as taking an aspirin tablet, both to cure and to kill with the power of mind. Now, as long as the race, mankind, can be made to accept two powers in the world, this will go on. There will be the material power, which is found in infection or contagion or growths or germs, so forth and so on, accidents, breakage. And there will be the power of directed malpractice, and there will be the power, such as you read about a couple of years ago in subliminal advertising, where without your even knowing that anyone is playing on your mind, you are made to buy things that you don't want, haven't even any knowledge of the fact that you're being made to do it, that it isn't your own will. Now, understand this, because this is the foundational stone of the entire Infinite Way message, and that which students have had much trouble in grasping, that as long as you individually can be made to accept two powers, whether material power or mental power, as long as you can be made to accept the power of matter or the power of mind for good or for evil, you are holding yourself in bondage to that belief, and the only way you can ever terminate that, the only way you can get free of the material forces that would act on your life, mind, or business, or automobile, or driving, and the only way that you can break free from the universal mental malpractice. We have very little or no directed malpractice in the Western world today, except that which comes out as advertising propaganda. But aside from that, we have very little of directed malpractice. But we do, and each one in the human picture is under the universal malpractice 24 hours a day. The universal belief that there are two powers operating on earth, good power and bad power, good mental power and bad mental power. And again, referring to those of you who have ever healed or been healed, you know now that matter does not contain within itself health or disease. Now take the next step and realize that mind does not hold within itself either health or disease, that both the mind and the body are instruments for the one power, the only power, and that power that has no opposition, that power that has no opponent. Somewhere back in history, and this must have been thousands of years ago, there must have lived a great mystic. I wouldn't be surprised that he might have been the greatest mystic ever known or ever lived on the face of the earth. For he so rightly understood the nature of God and the nature of this world since Adam, that he knew there is no evil in man. He knew that man had no capacity for evil, no potentialities for evil, that evil never had rise in any man or woman on the face of the earth. He knew that it was absolutely and entirely impersonal, and he so designated it by giving it the name devil, the one evil, or the evil one, thereby completely impersonalizing it and stripping it of power. If you want to see how completely he stripped it of power, picture Jesus Christ being tempted in the wilderness 3 times by the devil and saying no. Now what happened to the devil? Have you heard of him since in Jesus' experience? Did he have any power to do anything? Couldn't do a thing. All he could do was tempt. Just tempt. And when the word no came, that ended the devil. He was through. He was finished. His power was gone. He could suggest. There it ended. In other words, the evil wasn't in Jesus. It was in an impersonal temptation. But when it's recognized as that, that ends it. Because all you have to do is say no. And its power is gone. Because in and of itself, the devil has no power. Its power only begins when you say maybe. Now, a mistake was made back in those scriptural days, just as Paul made it later. And when the devil was presented as the one source of evil, somebody immediately began doing protective work against the devil and spilling holy water on it. In other words, accepting it as a power that something had to be done to, instead of seeing it as impersonal source of evil, no power, and dismissing it, as Jesus did. No, get thee behind me, and finishing it. Paul was to make the same mistake later. It cost him his safety, it cost him his freedom, it cost him his life. And it's cost the world a dear price ever since. He called it the carnal mind. He didn't personalize it. He knew that it wasn't Caesar and it wasn't the hierarchy, it wasn't the directors. He knew it wasn't man. It was this impersonal carnal mind, but he didn't have enough vision to see that the carnal mind isn't a power, except as you begin to fight it. And the moment you fight it, you've made a reality of it. And then you have no possibility of destroying it. The secret of harmonious living, not only physically, mentally, morally, financially, and with all of our human relationships, the secret of it all is in the ability to impersonalize any and every form of discord that appears, and then to nothingize it in that realization that in and of itself it hasn't power. Why? Well, we're back again to know him aright. If you know God aright, you know him as infinite, omnipotent, omnipresence, omniscience, and then you have no enmity against him because you have nothing else. In one of my writings, I've quoted that story of the ecclesiastic who died and went to heaven, knocked at the gate, at the door, and God answered. Who is it? And he says, it is I. I wish to come into heaven. Oh, God says, no, we're all filled up here. Heaven is full. You'll have to come back another time. And humble and obedient, the gentleman goes away and spends a few years pondering this idea and thinks there's enough time now for there to be room in heaven, and he goes back and knocks again, and God answers, who is there? It is I. Want to come into heaven? No, heaven is still filled up. There's no space. Third time, our friend comes back and knocks, and God says, who is there? And he said, it is thou. Oh, come on in, says God. There never was room here for me and thee. To understand God aright is to understand God as one. One power, then that means there are no other powers. And so there is no power in either matter or mind. The only power there is in God, and it isn't a power in the sense that it's a power over anything, because there isn't anything or anybody on which God could work or be a power. So the greatest secret of God of all is that God isn't power. God is just being. God is being all the time, the same yesterday and today and forever. You'll come back to that subject again when you begin to understand the nature of prayer. So it is that to know God aright is to know God as the infinite lawgiver. Now, of course, you know we can say that very quickly and pass on to another subject. But we'll miss a lot if we do. Because if you once acknowledge God as infinite law or infinite lawgiver, I ask you, is there a law of disease? physical or mental. And now you either have to take away God's infinite nature, or you have to take a stand on, that's right, there cannot be a law of disease, of accident, or of death if God is infinite. Well, there's only one. It can't be dual in nature. It can't be good and evil. It can't be eternal and finite. It can't be eternal and temporary. It can't be infinite and finite. Therefore, there can really be no law of disease, no law of age, no law of accident. And that which we witness in our human experience, remember, is the universal belief in two powers. And that can only be overcome in proportion as we individually accept oneness as the secret of life. Now, it is true that one with God is a majority, and that one Christ can heal millions. But just as we have discovered that one practitioner can heal hundreds of people and thousands of people in an ordinary lifetime, no one can substitute for the individual themselves their own entry into harmony. Because whereas the practitioner can heal a dozen times for you and lift you out of lack and do everything else, they cannot take the last step for you, which is a transformation of consciousness. It is you yourself who have to, one day or another, take your stand on one. Beautiful experience of that just came to my attention in the mail this week, when a student wrote saying, I was just about to write you for help because I hadn't been able to meet this physical condition, when the thought came to me that if I write this letter asking for help, I am acknowledging there is I and somebody else, and I can't do that. And the student wrote that within 15 minutes there wasn't a sign or trace of the condition. Just by standing on the truth that is part of the truth of the entire writings, but which we are only paying lip service to until that day when we ourselves say, I and the Father are one. Then if you won't take that stand, your practitioner has to take it for you. But that doesn't save you from next year's experience or even next week's experience. In fact, even the Master, if he were on earth in physical form, couldn't save you from that. Because out of his own lips he says, if I go not away, the Comforter will not come to you. Go ye and do likewise. In other words, teachers and teachings are only meant as temporary bridges. But the day comes when we have to walk over those bridges and get on land and stand by ourselves. But you can't do it, frankly, unless you have definite principles to stand on. Unless you consciously know what you're doing and why. Unless you know that there are specific truths. Faith won't do it. Faith plays no part in this entire spiritual life. Because faith, when it's rightly understood, has an entirely different meaning than has been given to it. Faith isn't something that you can achieve or attain. And just by saying, I believe and I have faith, is just a meaningless gesture that is apt to get you into more trouble than being honest and saying, I would have faith if I had something to go on or know or understand or feel about, but I don't, and so I can't have faith. Taking that honest stand, you'll soon have reason to have faith. But going around with these, I am rich and I know it, That isn't faith. It's self-hypnotism. And believing in God is self-hypnotism until you have something to believe in. And don't ever doubt for a minute. It is not difficult to know what you're believing in and to have faith in, because it's as demonstrable. It's as demonstrable as 2 times 2 being 4, and it's simple enough for children to grasp, much more readily than adults. Its very simplicity is what fools adults. Always remember that if you could find God with your mind, all of our universities would have a monopoly on him. They seem to be the hotbeds of atheism. It's only because they have the mind, and they have that with which you never can reach God. It's a stumbling block. The wisdom of man is foolishness with God, just as I have witnessed that the wisdom of God is foolishness to a lot of men, and more especially a lot of the college men. Now, let us see this in a very clear light. If God could be attained with bodies physically, there'd be hundreds of millions of people all over the world who have wonderful bodies and who would quickly reach God, but no one can. And in the same way, if God could be reached with the mind, there are brilliant men, dozens of millions of them all over the world. And they seem to be the ones furthest away from God. God can't be achieved physically or mentally. God can only be realized in stillness, in quietness, in confidence. God can only be realized when we acknowledge that I can in my own self do nothing and know nothing, that the wisdom of man is foolishness with God. Therefore, mind, be still. Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. Ah, there's the beginning of wisdom. Not speaking to God, not searching for God, being still and speak, Lord, thy servant heareth.